welcome. Kendra Armstrong here. I am so super excited to be talking to you today. Thanks so much for joining me. I've got some great stuff lined up for you over the next few minutes that's designed to help you launch into your post-divorce life secure, empowered, and rejuvenated. Maybe you're in the midst of a divorce right now, or you might already be divorced, but you're still struggling with the pain of the loss of your marriage. Perhaps you're feeling insecure, worried, or unsure of yourself. You might be wondering how you're going to make it alone without someone by your side to share your life with. Maybe the only light you see at the end of the tunnel is the light of an oncoming train. Whatever your situation, I'm here to encourage you, inspire you, and to give you hope. I've got a lot of exclusive, high-quality information to share with you today, so you'll absolutely want to shut out all distractions and be sure to grab a pen and some paper so you can take some notes and really soak up the information I'll be sharing with you. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. When was your first encounter with divorce? When did the word divorce get its grubby hands on your life? You might be thinking about your own divorce from your perspective as a divorced or divorcing spouse. I'm going to give you a slightly different perspective. I'm going to tell you about the first time divorce wormed its way into my life. Divorce became real for me when I was just 12 years old. I was practicing the piano when my dad came upstairs, pulled up a chair, and told me that he and my mom were getting divorced. In that instant, my carefree childhood as I had known it came to a screeching halt, and I was slammed with overwhelming grief, fear, and devastation. The foundation of my world shattered into a million pieces. I was so grief-stricken, I didn't know what to do or how to feel. I felt like the joy in my life had been sucked right out of me. That memory was seared into my brain. I can remember it like it was yesterday, even though it was over 30 years ago. My parents' divorce was very contentious, and it lasted for 3 long years. My little brother and I lived with my dad for a year or so until my mom got temporary custody of us. The divorce eventually just became a fact of life for me. I slowly learned to live with the ups and downs that everyone goes through in a divorce. Some days were horrible, some weren't that bad, some were actually good. You may be able to relate to that. Do you know what I mean? I eventually learned to adjust to the fact that our family of 4 had been torn apart and there was nothing I could do about it. Eventually, the trial came. The summer of the trial, I was working at a camp in Colorado. Back then in Tennessee, each party was allowed one surprise witness. Much to my father's surprise, I was my mom's surprise witness. She had flown me back from Colorado to testify so that she could get permanent custody of my brother and me. When the trial started, my mom's attorney went to great lengths to keep my presence unknown to my father. She had me tucked away in the upper floor of the law library for 2 days where I waited to be called to testify. Although I'd been well hidden in the library for 2 days, all of that careful planning flew out the window when I walked into the courtroom and came face to face with my father. My father scowled down at me, shook his head, and said, "I am so disappointed in you, Kendra." Imagine what that does to a 15-year-old girl. I felt sick to my stomach. All I could think about was turning around and running in the other direction. When I got up on the witness stand, things went smoothly at first. I told the judge that I loved both of my parents very much. I told him that I didn't want to have to choose which parent to live with. but that my little brother and I would rather live with my mom. Just when I thought my part in the trial was over, my dad's attorney stood up to question me, and the first thing he did was hand me a notebook. I recognized the notebook immediately, and my heart sunk to the floor. It was my diary. A diary I'd written in when I was 12 years old during the beginning stages of my parents' divorce. I hadn't seen it in 3 years and had forgotten all about it. My father's attorney had me read every single word of it out loud in court. Now, you can only imagine what a preteen girl writes about her mother during the worst time in her life. I sobbed uncontrollably. I was devastated and felt totally betrayed by both of my parents. I wanted to share this story with you because if you have children, you might not fully understand how your children may be feeling and what the divorce experience is like from their perspective. I wanted you to see firsthand what it was like for me to be a child in the middle of a contentious custody battle. As adults, when we're going through a divorce, we tend to be so focused on our own pain, grief, fear, and insecurity that even though we know in our heads that our children are also living through the pain of our divorce, we don't truly understand that they feel torn and don't want to hurt either parent. Another reason I wanted to share this story with you is not to make you feel guilty or worried about your children, but to let you know that children usually bounce back and recover much faster than the adults do. Children need unconditional love, security, and reassurance that they are not the cause of their parents' divorce. When they have those things and have a peaceful environment to go home to, it makes things much better for them. They need as little involvement in their parents' divorce and legal issues as possible, and they don't need to be given blow-by-blow narratives from either parent. It helps tremendously to take the focus off of ourselves and to really consider our divorce from our children's point of view. And, as crazy as it may seem, to also look at it from our spouse's point of view. Stepping back and looking at a situation from a different perspective can make a big difference in the decisions we make and in the actions we take. One of the good things that came out of being a child of divorce was that I decided I wanted to become a family law attorney so that I could help people through their divorces just as my mom's attorney helped her. That's what I call a silver lining in the cloud. Little did I know that shortly after becoming a divorce attorney, many years later, I would again find my world shattered by divorce. However, this time I felt like the abandoned, rejected, and hopeless wife, with a beautiful baby boy of my own to look out for. I was not the least bit prepared for the devastating loss and grief that I experienced. It was truly the death of my family, the death of a dream. I always planned on getting married someday. I never planned on getting divorced. Divorce happens to other people, or so I told myself. I'd already been through my parents' divorce, and it wasn't going to happen to me. My husband and I separated and reconciled several times, and I filed for divorce twice. Deciding to go through with the divorce and see it to the bitter end was one of the hardest, most gut-wrenching decisions I've ever made. I had well-meaning family and friends who were giving me conflicting advice, and I felt so guilty and ashamed that I was getting divorced. Who wants to be labeled divorced? It's like wearing a huge scarlet letter. I felt like a failure and a reject. I wanted to do the right thing and save my marriage, and as a Christian, I struggled tremendously. Unfortunately, the situation we were living in was not a good one. It was no environment to raise a child in. Ultimately, I accepted the fact that the marriage was ending. It wasn't what I wanted, but I couldn't go on the way we were. It was a terrible situation for everyone involved. When I finally went to court to have the judge sign my final decree of divorce, the pain overwhelmed me once again. It was one of the deepest losses that I've ever experienced. I didn't understand why. Why did this happen to me? Don't I deserve to be happy? Don't I deserve to have a family like everyone else? I just couldn't believe that I was feeling hurt, betrayed, and rejected by the man who had pursued and adored me relentlessly before our marriage. By the man who told me all the time that he loved me more than life itself. By the man who promised to be with me till death do us part. By the man who was the father of my child. At first, I laid most, if not all, of the blame at my husband's feet. Over time, I realized that I too had made terrible mistakes and had hurt and wronged him just as badly as he had hurt and wronged me. My actions may have been different than his actions, but that didn't excuse my actions. I'd inflicted pain on my husband and on my child in my own way. Both of them also suffered the searing loss of our family. I wasn't the only one in pain. At first, I felt devastated on the weekends when my son went to spend time with his father and his father's girlfriend. However, I had to consider how important it is for my son to have his father in his life. When I started looking at things from their perspectives, I was able to start forgiving. I was able to start letting go of the bitterness and hurt and begin to heal and to move on with my life. But it was a slow and difficult process. It wasn't something that happened overnight. I also started realizing that because I was so swept away by the romance of our relationship before we got married, and because I so desperately wanted someone to love me and cherish me forever, I chose to overlook and ignore things that indicated that there would be trouble ahead. Does this story sound familiar to you? You may be experiencing and feeling some of the same things that I felt and experienced. I've experienced firsthand the grief and the pain of divorce, first as a child of divorce and then as a wife. I know that at times you may feel lost and hopeless. I can relate because sometimes that's how I felt. The good news is these were only feelings, and they were only temporary. These feelings didn't last forever. I'm here today to give you hope and encouragement. You can be much more than just a survivor of divorce. You can actually be empowered by your situation. You deserve to have a joy-filled and abundant life, and you can have it. If you want it, it's yours for the taking. Doesn't that sound amazing? It's within your grasp, and we're going to talk about what you can do to get there. The biggest frustration that I've had being a divorce attorney is that most people's real problems stem from things that the legal system simply can't fix. It would be awesome if a judge could wave a magic wand and fix all of our problems with our spouses. In fact, that's what many people expect judges to do. I've also found that in some cases, people look to the courts to retaliate against a spouse who's wronged them. They want nothing more than to have the court throw the book at their spouse so that they can feel vindicated and triumphant. They mistakenly believe that once they've had their day in court, they'll have closure. The reality couldn't be further from the truth. The courts are there to dissolve the legal bonds of matrimony. As far as the courts are concerned, they're terminating a contract. From the court's perspective, it's basically the dissolution of a business partnership. When the parties can't agree on the best way to do it, the court divides the property, makes a determination about support, and, if there are children involved, decides a parenting schedule based on the children's best interest. The courts can't fix that hole in our hearts, and the pain that comes from the death of our families and our dreams. The courts can't change our spouses. The courts can order people to do or not do certain things, but does that mean that they'll do what the court tells them to do? No. You may have already found that out for yourself. I see it every day. We can't change our spouses, but we can change ourselves. Throughout my lifetime of divorce and after working with divorce clients for the past 19 years, I've discovered solutions and principles that really work when they're put into practice, and they can change your life in tremendous ways if you're willing and open to change. Moving past the pain of your divorce and taking control of your future requires you to take 3 essential steps. The first step is to uncover what is really keeping you from moving past your past and moving forward with your life. This is a difficult step to take, and it requires you to dig down deep into your heart and examine what you've experienced in the past. It's not pleasant, but once you do it, you'll start to feel that heavy weight being lifted off your shoulders. The second step is to decide that you must change whatever is holding you back. This step requires you to nail down why you must change. When you have a powerful why as your motivator, nothing will stand in your way. In just a minute, we'll talk about some questions you can ask yourself to identify why change will be a good thing. But for now, the important point is that you have to make the decision to change. The third and final step is to take action now. That may sound overwhelming, but don't let it be. I'm going to give you some action steps that you can start taking today. All you have to do is start taking those baby steps. Watching this video class is a huge step, so pat yourself on the back. Don't get discouraged. Remember, how do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. You just need to devise a plan for taking each little bite and then take a bite every day. Just do it, even if you don't feel like it. Knowing why you must change will help to motivate you to take action when you'd rather be doing something else. Taking action immediately is crucial. Just 1 little baby step per day. Before you know it, you'll start building up momentum and you'll feel so good you won't want to stop. Doesn't that make sense? Don't you want to regain the joy in your life and improve your relationships and your overall outlook on life? Do you want to stop believing that your divorce has ruined your life? Do you want to start believing instead that your life is different but can also be better? Do you want to really start living again? Let me share with you some action steps that I took and still take today that have helped me tremendously to be much more than just a survivor of divorce. They've helped me to come out on the other side content, joyful, confident, secure, and empowered with a whole new perspective on life after divorce. Throughout my lifetime of dealing with divorce on both a personal level and as a divorce attorney, I've noticed that people who successfully move past the searing pain of their divorce and lead fulfilling, contented lives have very specific ways of interpreting and responding to the problems life throws at them. It all comes down to how we think about and interpret our life experiences and day-to-day problems, and how we choose to react. How we perceive our world and how we think about what happens in our lives determines how we act and how we feel. Notice I didn't say that people who've experienced what I call total divorce recovery don't have problems and that their lives are perfect. Far from it. But they do have specific methods of interpreting the world around them and responding to the circumstances they find themselves in that help them to keep getting up every time they're slammed to the ground and keep moving forward. They have a certain perspective that enables them to seize control of their futures by moving past their past. They don't forget that their divorce was painful, but they no longer feel the pain. Instead, they learn from the pain of their past, let go of it, and move forward with confidence. The great news I have for you today is that you can learn how to do this too. Doesn't that sound great? It requires a paradigm shift, a dramatic change in your thinking and coping techniques. One of my associates, Amanda, has coined the term dramastic change. It's a dramatic and drastic change. Unless you change how you are, you'll always have what you've got. Are you ready to make some changes in your life? Here are a few questions you can ask yourself to identify why it's important to start making some changes. How does your life feel right now? Are you fully contented with it? How are you handling your pain? Do you want to remain in the emotional state you're in right now? If the answer to that last question is no, I've got great news for you. You have the power to change it. It's within your control. You hold the keys. It does require you to change, to do things differently, to approach problems and challenges in a new way. It also requires you to let go of the past and to accept that there are many things you'll never be able to control. That's a hard truth to swallow, but it's a fact of life. The one and only thing that you can change is you. That's it. Doesn't that make sense? So, what can you do to dramatically change your life and live a life that you love despite your divorce and despite your circumstances? In order to help you start making a dramatic change in your life, I'm going to reveal to you my top 10 secrets of total divorce recovery. Many of these strategies may seem counterintuitive, however, these techniques really work. They've worked in my own life and in the lives of many others, and they can work in your life too. All you have to do is start putting them into action. The first secret to total divorce recovery is to learn to forgive yourself. Shame, regret, humiliation, embarrassment, and feelings of failure can cripple us. We can't eliminate those toxic emotions from our lives until we first start forgiving ourselves. Wouldn't you agree that we tend to talk a lot more about forgiving others, but spend much less time learning how to forgive ourselves? Forgiveness is an ongoing process. Shame and regret will continue to creep up on us from time to time, but we can choose how we want to respond to it. I found that the first step in learning to forgive myself is to honestly admit to myself what I've done, what I'm ashamed of, what I regret, and what I've failed at. Just getting it out there exposes it to the light and takes away its power. Instead of keeping it inside of me where it burns a hole inside my gut, I get it out so I can start healing. Even though I don't deserve forgiveness, I realize that God forgives me. If He forgives me, then who am I not to forgive myself? When I refuse to forgive myself, it sucks the joy right out of my life, and it keeps me from fulfilling my purpose in life and really being there for my son, my family, and my clients. And it keeps me stuck somewhere I don't want to be and not moving forward. Doesn't that make sense? The second secret to total divorce recovery is to forgive the seemingly unforgivable. When I forgive someone who's hurt me, especially when they've wounded me deeply, it releases the power that person has over me. It really helps me more than it helps them. When I don't forgive someone, when I hang on to bitterness and anger and hold a grudge against them, I'm mostly hurting myself. Think about it. Holding a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Not forgiving can kill us emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and relationally in the end. What does it mean to forgive? One definition of the verb forgive is to cease to feel resentment against someone, as in to forgive one's enemies. Basically, when I forgive someone, I'm no longer allowing that person to live rent free in my head. Instead of being consumed by thoughts of how they've hurt me or ruined my life, I evict those thoughts from my mind. I get them out of my life. Doesn't that sound refreshing? So, how do we forgive someone? We can start by asking ourselves, why am I having such a hard time forgiving this person? When we're angry at someone, it's because they've hurt us. Wouldn't you agree that the more someone hurts us, the harder it is to forgive them? Perhaps you're holding on to bitterness because it's one of the only remaining connections you have to that person. If you forgive them, you'll stop thinking about them, and that scares you. That means they're no longer an active part of your day-to-day life. Sometimes we'd rather live in the pain that's familiar to us than to venture outside into the unfamiliar, because our fear of the unknown is so much greater than just dealing with our familiar pain that we're used to. Which brings us to the next question to ask ourselves, which is, why must I forgive? How is my refusal to forgive hurting me? How's it affecting my children, my family, my friends, and my loved ones? How is it affecting my ability to function on a day-to-day basis? How's it affecting my ability to really live the life I want to live and to feel secure, peaceful, and content? Am I spending so much time thinking about my anger and resentment towards someone else, or even towards myself, that I'm not being productive? Am I allowing the anger and bitterness to preoccupy a large portion of my day? As a result, do I find that I'm depressed and feel hopeless? Having concrete reasons why forgiveness is a necessary step for me to take is a powerful motivator, and it makes it much easier for me to do. When I see how lethal resentment and bitterness can be, and how it keeps me from focusing on and even noticing the many good things that happen every day, it makes me want to avoid bitterness and resentment at all costs, because it hurts me and holds me back. To quickly recap, when we forgive someone else, we make the conscious decision to stop resenting that person. When we forgive ourselves, we give ourselves permission to stop beating ourselves up over what we've done in the past. It's one way I deal with people and situations that hurt me. Even though we seem to be wired to hold grudges and lash out at people who've hurt us, in the end, it's like a boomerang, and it only ends up hurting ourselves. Oftentimes, the person we resent is going on their merry way, while we're being eaten up with rage, anger, hatred, and bitterness. Forgiveness isn't a one-time proposition. It's an ongoing choice I have to make every single day. It's like weeding our flower beds or brushing our teeth. We have to keep doing it over and over again. And in the case of brushing our teeth, we have to do it day in and day out. The longer we go without weeding our flower beds or brushing our teeth, the bigger mess we have on our hands to clean up, and the more costly and painful it is when we ultimately have no choice but to take some action. Having rotten, infected teeth and gums, not to mention bad breath, will repel dates from miles away. So will holding on to bitterness and unforgiveness. It makes us unpleasant to be around because our thoughts and our actions are infused with and overflowing with negativity, and it spews out on everyone we come into contact with. It sucks the joy out of life for everyone around us, including ourselves. Doesn't that make sense? The way I forgive someone is I ask God to help me forgive them, and I ask God to help them, heal whatever is hurting them, and to bless them. Some people find it helpful to write down on a piece of paper affirmations such as, I forgive you, and I wish the best for you. Whatever method you choose to use, it's a habit you can develop. and you'll find that it becomes easier over time. What forgiveness does for me is it totally changes my entire outlook and perspective, and it changes the way I perceive and interact with others and how I interpret situations. Many times, because forgiveness changes me, the other person also changes, and we end up both benefiting tremendously from it. Forgiveness feels so good to me that I'm addicted to it. You can become a forgiveness addict too. I promise you, this stuff works wonders. Forgiveness frees us to let go of the pain of our past, and it gives us peace of mind, which is what we need to really seize control of our futures and start living a life we love. One last note about forgiveness. It makes it a lot easier for me to forgive someone else when I remember all the times I've needed someone else to forgive me. I do things every day that are less than perfect. They may be intentional or unintentional. In fact, I might not even realize that I've done something that's hurt someone else. However, it doesn't change the fact that for whatever reasons, my actions cause someone else pain. When I remember that none of us are perfect, that we're all in this messy, imperfect world together, it gives me a more forgiving state of mind. In short, it changes my whole perspective on forgiveness. And forgiveness dramatically changes how I feel. It's the cornerstone that's the foundation we need to move past the pain of our divorce. The third secret to total divorce recovery is to have an attitude of gratitude and enjoy all that you have right now. What am I thankful for right now? I'm thankful for my family, my dogs and cats, my friends, my good health, having a roof over my head and food to eat, having a job. It's amazing how just being grateful totally changes our thinking and our mindset. When it comes right down to it, this moment is all we have. Learn how to be happy with what you have while you pursue all that you want. Right now, you may be unhappy with your life and you want to change it. That's great. Be sure to take the time to be thankful for the good things in your life today. You might be finding it difficult to think of anything good in your life right now. If that's the case, take a minute to complete this sentence. My life would be completely turned upside down if I suddenly lost the following 3 things. Then name those things. That's your gratitude list. I challenge you for the next 3 days to make a gratitude list every night before you go to bed and see how it changes your perspective and changes how you feel. The fourth secret to total divorce recovery requires you to ask yourself a really hard question. What role did I play in the breakup of my marriage? Really think about that question and take a few minutes to sit down and start writing out what comes to mind. Be totally honest with yourself. Admit your mistakes. Ask yourself, what could I have done differently? Then ask yourself, what have I learned from the mistakes I've made in my marriage? What do I need to change about myself? Our instinct is to play the blame game and blame others instead of taking responsibility for our own actions and decisions. The problem with that is when we constantly blame everyone and everything else, we miss out on opportunities to vastly improve our lives and our futures. We miss out on learning the lessons that we need to learn so that we can have successful relationships and fulfilling lives. It also causes us to have insecurity and low self-esteem because when we blame others instead of taking responsibility for our own actions, we're essentially telling ourselves that our own happiness and security is totally dependent on someone else, and we're helpless and hopeless. Doesn't that make sense? You might not have looked at it from that angle before. Do you feel like your eyes are being opened? If so, you're beginning to encounter a paradigm shift. You're seeing things from a whole new perspective, which is a vital step in the healing process. The fifth secret to total divorce recovery is to accept the things you can't change or control, such as the past and other people, and change what you can change, which is you. I'll admit it, I'm a control freak. My instinct is to take charge and try to make people do things the way I want them done, when I want them done. I've learned the hard way that the problem with trying to control everyone and everything is that it's totally impossible, and trying to do so ends up driving me and everyone else crazy, and it leaves me frustrated and nervous. Sometimes it throws me into a complete state of panic. Have you ever felt like that? You might not consider yourself to be a control freak, but do you ever find yourself trying to force or otherwise manipulate your spouse or your children into doing things your way? If so, how's that working out for you? If this scenario sounds familiar, I'm here to tell you that you can learn to lose control and to love it. When I started accepting that the only thing that I ultimately have any control over whatsoever is myself, life got a whole lot easier. The past is the past. I can't change it, but I can learn from it. Other people will say and do things that I can't control. That's just a cold, hard fact of life. Even if I have some influence over them, that doesn't mean they're going to do the things I want them to do. I do have total control over how I react and respond to my circumstances and to other people. I can only control myself. That's it. No sense in wasting my time hitting my head up against a wall until I'm unconscious. It hurts a lot. Losing control and loving it means that I can have some peace. Doesn't a little peace of mind sound incredible? The sixth secret to total divorce recovery is to believe in and embrace your true value. You're not a cosmic accident. You are special. There's no one else quite like you. There's a reason you're here on this earth right now. You've got a purpose. You've got special gifts and talents, skills and abilities and insights that you've been blessed with. The problem is, many times we forget how unique and special and loved we truly are. Start telling yourself that you are special, that you are worthy, and you will start believing it. And here's the thing, if you tell yourself you're a failure or that you can't do something, then guess what? You're right. You are setting yourself up for failure. But if you tell yourself you're worthy and that you deserve to live an abundant life filled with joy, it changes your entire attitude, and it affects how you interact with others and the decisions you make. Does that make sense? Notice the pearl and the oyster. Pearls form because of an irritating grain of sand. So let's start thinking about how we can take the pain and irritation of our divorce and turn it into a beautiful pearl of great price. It can be done because I've done it and many other people have also done it. You can too. It just requires you to want to do it and to take action by making some major changes in your thinking and mindset. The seventh secret to total divorce recovery is to free yourself from depending on the approval of others. My written goal after my divorce was to get remarried in 2 years. I thought if only I can find the perfect guy, he'll make me feel better and make everything that's wrong in my life right. I kept telling myself that as soon as I had a new husband, my life would be whole. Can you relate? After I got divorced, I looked at other women who had boyfriends or husbands, and I thought that they were better than me and that I was lacking and undesirable because I was divorced. I figured if I could just snag a new husband that it would prove that I was desirable and worthy. Have you ever felt like that? Well, guess what? It turns out that after 7 long years of being divorced, I finally realized that trying to find someone new to hang my hopes, dreams, self worth, and security on was setting myself up for massive disappointment. We all crave love and respect. However, we're only human and we make mistakes and let others down, even the people we love the most. I realize that the only one who will never let me down and who will always be there for me and give me that enduring, unconditional love and approval that I so desperately need is God. We all have a God-shaped hole in our heart. We turn to other people, alcohol, drugs, overeating, shopping, overspending, anything we can to fill that emptiness in our hearts. But the truth is, those things can only temporarily make us feel better. What we truly crave is the unconditional and permanent love of our Creator, who understands us and accepts us just the way we are. When I came to that realization, it occurred to me that I was making a husband my idol. I was putting a man on a pedestal and demanding from him what he couldn't possibly give me. A husband might be nice, but a husband couldn't fix what was wrong with me. Depending on someone else to give us value and worth and a reason for living is the biggest relationship mistake that will lead to disappointment and failure every time. A spouse is a partner, someone to journey through life with. They're not the journey itself or the goal to be reached. When I finally realized that fact, I had a total paradigm shift, a totally new way of how I viewed life. And it freed me and helped me to really start enjoying my life right now and not be worried about finding someone else. The end game of total divorce recovery isn't finding someone new, it's finding a new you. Doesn't that sound amazing? When you find the new you, it opens up all kinds of doors. It makes you less needy and much more desirable. It also makes you better able to spot a predator and get the heck out of there before you become the next meal. Does what I'm saying make sense to you? This attitude and mindset took me a long time to attain, which is why I'm sharing it with you today so that you don't have to suffer for years and waste your life. Would I like to get married again? Sure I would. Is it one of my written goals? Nope. I have exactly what and who I need in my life right now, and I am so grateful. I enjoy what I have right now because it's all I've got. Every day I know that God takes care of me and provides for me. My marital status doesn't define me anymore. Being divorced doesn't make me any worse or any better than anyone else. It just means I'm not married right now. I've chosen not to settle for just any guy who throws some attention my way. A man's attention does not make me special. On the flip side, a man's inattention doesn't decrease my value and worth. I enjoy my life and I'm content with or without a husband. Let's face it, there'll always be naysayers and people who don't like me. If I base my opinion of myself on what others thought of me, it would be very depressing. Other people don't make us valuable, special, or lovable. Our Creator has already done that for us. Making the choice to not let others' opinions of me define who I am was a huge breakthrough in my life, and it can be for you too. Don't you want to boost your self-esteem and self-confidence? Choosing to no longer be a slave to the approval of others is a crucial step in your emotional freedom, and it'll empower you and help you start building your confidence. The eighth secret to total divorce recovery is to learn to look at situations that appear to be failures and see them as learning experiences, and even as a new and better direction in life. The biggest obstacle to living an empowered, thriving, and fulfilling life is our own limiting beliefs about ourselves. If we believe we can't do something, we can't. How we describe situations and events to ourselves, our self-talk, affects how we interpret and respond to our circumstances. Do you remember Thomas Edison? Edison was quoted as saying, "I haven't failed 10,000 times. I haven't failed once. I've succeeded in proving that those 10,000 ways won't work. When I've eliminated the ways that won't work, I'll find the way that will work." Instead of saying he failed, he said he succeeded in proving what doesn't work. That's awesome, don't you agree? Our negative self-talk and how we describe and frame things can really put a damper on our attitudes and our interactions with others and the way we approach life. Just by making a simple change in how we say things and how we talk to ourselves makes a world of difference. For example, you have a seemingly insurmountable problem. Instead of saying, "There's no way I can overcome that problem," you ask yourself, "How can I solve this problem?" Then you will open yourself up to solutions and possibilities that you would have been blocking out if you had told yourself that solving the problem is impossible. Does that make sense to you? The ninth secret to total divorce recovery is to find the silver lining in every cloud of adversity. Would you believe me if I told you that what you consider to be a trial in your life could actually be a treasure? Wouldn't it give you some reassurance to know that there's purpose in your pain? The trials we suffer in life are painful. When our bodies are in pain, the pain serves a useful and life-saving purpose. It tells us there's something wrong that we need to take a close look at and fix. In the case of a child touching a hot stove, the pain warns the child that he'd better get his finger off of it fast. There's actually a pain management technique that requires the patient to name their pain and to talk to it, to work with it, instead of working against it. This technique actually causes the patient to start to relax, to lower his heart rate and his blood pressure, and to start thinking more clearly. Even though we can't change the fact that a painful event has happened, we can choose to learn from our pain. One way to start learning from the pain is to start asking yourself, what good came out of it? The good that comes out of a painful situation is your silver lining in the cloud. Life is full of ups and downs, good times and bad. Seasons change. Thankfully, we aren't always stuck in the winter. We are always going to have problems and pain in life that interrupt our lives at what seems to be the worst possible times. But we can learn how to effectively deal with our responses to those problems. Looking for that silver lining in the cloud of adversity will give you a new perspective and will help you to take your focus off the darkness and place it instead on the light. Let me ask you a question. Are you a pessimist or an optimist? A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. I'm a glass half full kind of girl. Are you? A successful man is one who can lay a firm foundation with the bricks others have thrown at him. Wouldn't it be awesome if you could take the bricks that were thrown at you in your divorce and actually use them to build a new, empowered, secure, and confident life for yourself? It's absolutely doable. The 10th secret to total divorce recovery is to persevere with confidence. Get back up and keep going, no matter how you feel and regardless of how many times you're slammed to the ground or trip and fall. Make it a habit. Ask yourself, why must I keep going? Just do it. Expect that you'll be told that you can't succeed and that you will encounter many obstacles along the way, and then power right on through. Let me tell you a secret about myself. I love a challenge. Much of my professional success has resulted from others telling me that I wasn't capable of doing various things. I could have accepted what they said and given up, but instead I viewed the criticism as a challenge and I set out to prove them wrong. You don't have to be a naturally competitive person to have that same type of successful mindset. It's something that you can achieve by simply changing what you believe about yourself. If you have a burning desire in your heart to achieve a goal, if, for example, there's a career you want to go into or a business you want to start, and you're absolutely passionate about it, then go for it. Instead of telling yourself it's impossible for me to do that because I don't have enough money or I don't have enough time or whatever the excuse, ask yourself, what must I do to make it happen? When you start asking yourself that question, your mind will automatically start seeking out solutions, even when you're not aware of it. The questions you ask yourself and what you think about prime your brain to seek out and take note of whatever information you tell it to. For example, have you ever purchased a new car, let's say a red Jeep, and then the next thing you know, you see red Jeeps everywhere you go? Does that sound familiar? That's how powerful our thoughts and beliefs are. The great news is that we can choose to control our thoughts. We can engage in positive self-talk instead of self-sabotaging self-talk. This new way of thinking makes a huge difference in how we perceive the world around us. So one way to instantly boost your self-confidence is to tell yourself, I will succeed. I will triumph over my problems. I will get past the pain. It's only temporary. I deserve to have a joyful, empowered life, and I deserve to be peaceful and content. I am special and deeply loved because that's how my Creator made me, and my happiness does not depend on what anyone else says or does. Even if you don't believe it at first, take my word for it. If you talk to yourself in a positive light, it will change your perspective, which in turn changes how you interact with others and how you face problems. Then you will immediately start to see how your life is changing for the better, and you'll actually start believing it. You might not believe me, but just try it and see what happens, even if you're totally skeptical. It's worked wonders for me. Any successful person out there will tell you the same thing. If they didn't believe they could succeed, they wouldn't be where they are today. Just keep moving forward no matter how slowly you feel you're going. Remember, by perseverance, the snail reached the ark. Here's another great tip from our good friend Charlie Brown to help you boost your self-esteem and improve your mood. You can't feel your way into an action, but you can act your way into a feeling. So Charlie Brown starts off in this comic strip with his head hung low, shoulders hunched over, and he says, "This is my depressed stance." He says, when you're depressed, it makes a lot of difference how you stand. The worst thing you can do is straighten up and hold your head high, because then you'll start to feel better. If you're going to get any joy out of being depressed, you've got to stand like this with your head down, your shoulders hunched over. So, even when you feel depressed, hopeless, and like a failure, take some advice from Charlie Brown. If you don't want to continue to feel depressed and hopeless, and if you do want to start feeling a little bit better, then stand up tall, hold your head up high, look people in the eye, and smile. Try it. You might like it. Have you gained some value from this video class today? What one thing really spoke to you? If you enjoyed this class and really want to focus in on what's holding you back and keeping you from living the life you're meant to live, I'm offering a complimentary one-on-one discovery call for qualifying applicants. It'll help you to gain more clarity and focus and help you to identify and lift the fog that's clouding you right now. It's absolutely free and there's nothing for sale. At the end of the discovery call, if we feel we can help you further and if we believe that you'd be a good fit for one of our programs, we'll offer you an opportunity to hear more about what we have available. Not everyone will qualify, and that's okay because space is very limited. I'm only offering the discovery call to those applicants we know we can help, who are dedicated to making changes in their lives and are willing to put in the work. If you believe you're one of those individuals and you're ready to begin reclaiming your life, please go to kendraarmstrong.com/discovery call and fill out the form now. Spaces are limited and you should apply now. We're only doing a few calls every week, and the people I think are the most qualified will get the calls, the others won't. Please do take all the time you need to fill out the application. I had a great time today and I hope that you did too. Thanks for hanging out with me. Bye for now.